I don't really remember the exact moment when I first felt something was wrong between Emma and me. Maybe it was one of those silent mornings when we sat across from each other at the kitchen table, both pretending to be too busy with our phones to talk. Maybe it was her new habit of leaving the apartment earlier than she needed to, claiming she wanted fresh air before work, even though she used to hate waking up before the alarm. Or maybe it started even earlier, in small details I didn't pay attention to, the ones that quietly pile up until they form a wall you can't ignore anymore. What I do know is this: the beginning didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like decay, slow, quiet, almost invisible, like mold under wallpaper. For the first 2 years of our relationship, everything felt easy. We weren't perfect, but we fit. She laughed at my dry jokes. I calmed her down when she spiraled, and she always grabbed my hand when we crossed the street like she needed to know I was physically there. There was a time when she never left a room without brushing her fingers against my arm, almost subconsciously. Now, months later, I could stand right next to her, and she acted like I was air. The first real crack appeared on a Thursday. Emma came home late. Not too late to be suspicious on its own, but late enough that I had already eaten dinner, washed the dishes, and started scrolling through random YouTube videos just to keep my mind busy. She walked in quietly, keys barely jingling. When I looked up at her, her smile appeared a second too late, like she had to put it on consciously. "Long day?" I asked. "Yeah, meetings, you know." Her voice sounded normal, but the way she avoided eye contact wasn't. That night, when she went to shower, her phone buzzed on the couch beside me. I swear to God, I didn't touch it. I didn't even lean closer. But the screen lit up, and the notification preview flashed before it disappeared. A name I didn't recognize. A message that only said, "Did you get home?" 3 simple words. But they hit me harder than any accusation or insult could. I didn't say anything, not that night, and not the next morning. I told myself it could have been a coworker, someone checking if she got home after late meetings. Everyone can have friends I don't know about. I tried to be rational. I tried to be calm. But those 3 words carved themselves into my mind, repeating on loop. The second crack came 2 days later. Emma and I were supposed to watch a movie together, something we hadn't done in weeks. I made popcorn, turned off most of the lights, tried to recreate the small comfort we used to enjoy. She sat next to me, but not close, not touching, not even leaning into the cushions like she'd planned to stay. 20 minutes into the movie, her phone lit up again. She grabbed it too quickly, too defensively. She stepped out onto the balcony to answer. She must have thought I wouldn't hear her through the sliding door. But I heard enough. Her voice was soft, softer than anything she had used with me in months. "No, I'm fine. He won't notice. I miss you too." My chest tightened so suddenly that it physically hurt. I felt it in my spine, in my palms, even in my teeth. I didn't breathe. I just sat there staring at the paused movie screen, my heartbeat drowning out every logical thought I tried to force into my head. When she came back inside, she avoided looking at me. She sat down, grabbed one piece of popcorn, then put it back without eating it. Eventually she said she was tired and went to bed early. I stayed awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling like the floor beneath us had shifted in a way she noticed long before I did. The third crack was the one I couldn't ignore anymore. It happened on a Sunday morning, one of those rare mornings when we both had the day off. I offered to cook breakfast. She agreed, but her voice sounded distant, like she was answering out of obligation rather than interest. While I was chopping vegetables, her phone again buzzed. But this time she wasn't anywhere near it. She was in the shower. And the message preview didn't disappear fast enough. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." In that moment, everything inside me went still. Not angry, not sad, just still, like my entire body froze before my mind could catch up. I didn't touch her phone, even then, I didn't open it, didn't unlock anything, didn't scroll. It didn't matter. The preview was enough, the sentence was enough. The tone, the context, everything was unmistakable. Emma walked in moments later, towel around her hair, humming something under her breath. When she saw me standing there, not moving, staring at her phone, her expression changed instantly. Her mouth parted slightly, not with guilt, not with fear, with realization. She knew I knew, and I knew she knew I knew. The silence between us felt heavier than anything we had lived through before. I forced myself to speak, even though my voice barely came out. Who is he? Her lips trembled a little, but not enough to be called sorrow. She looked down. She didn't answer. Emma, I repeated. Who is he? Still nothing. For a moment I actually wondered if I wanted to hear the answer, if I even needed it. But then she whispered so quietly I almost didn't catch it. I didn't mean for it to happen. That sentence broke something in me. Maybe because it confirmed everything without telling me anything. Maybe because it sounded rehearsed, like she had said it before to him. Probably. Maybe because it meant she wasn't going to deny it, fight it, or apologize in any meaningful way. I trusted you, I said, my voice shaking. I trusted you more than anyone. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from lack of sleep, or guilt, or late nights with him. I didn't know anymore. I'm sorry, she whispered, but the word felt empty, too light, too small for what she had done. That was the moment, the exact second when the version of us I had held onto for years finally shattered. And as I stood there, surrounded by pieces of a life I thought we were building together, I realized something painful and undeniable. The betrayal wasn't in the act. It was in how easily she walked away from everything we were. I woke up earlier than usual, long before the alarm had a chance to scream into the silence of the room. For a few seconds I didn't even remember where I was or what day it was. Only when I turned my head and saw the empty half of the bed did everything from last night hit me again like a punch to the chest. The space next to me was cold and touched. She hadn't come back to sleep beside me. She hadn't even pretended to. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to my own breathing. It sounded too loud, too fast, like I was trying to convince myself I was still here, still real. Because all night, my mind kept replaying the same image, her face when she looked at her phone, the tension in her jaw, that tiny flinch she thought I didn't notice. I kept telling myself it didn't mean anything, but I didn't believe myself. I finally forced myself out of bed. The floor felt colder than usual. The mirror in the hallway caught me on the way to the kitchen, and for a moment I stopped and stared. I looked tired. Not physically, more like someone had peeled a layer of confidence off me overnight. My eyes didn't look like mine. They looked like someone who already knew he was losing something important but was pretending he was in single quotes t. She was already in the kitchen. I could smell coffee before I even entered the room. That used to be comforting. Today it wasn't. Morning, I said. My voice sounded normal, which surprised me. She didn't turn around. Morning, just one word. No warmth, no softness, not even irritation, because irritation means emotion. This was something worse. This was distance. I sat down at the table, watching her back while she stirred her coffee, even though she never added anything to it. She was just avoiding facing me. Or maybe she was avoiding letting me see her eyes. It's strange how quickly you can recognize the shape of dishonesty, even when you don't want to. I didn't hear you come to bed last night, I said carefully. Well, I slept in the other room. I didn't want to wake you. A simple explanation. Clean, convenient, rehearsed. I swallowed 100 questions I wanted to ask. Where were you? Who were you talking to? Why do I feel like I'm fighting a battle I never signed up for? Instead, I just nodded, pretending everything was fine. I hated myself for it, but I wasn't ready for the truth yet. Not until I had something more solid than a sinking feeling. She finally turned around, but only long enough to grab her mug. She didn't meet my eyes. She was dressed nicer than usual for work. And I noticed the small detail she always forgot: she had put on perfume. A specific one. A special occasions only one. I had given it to her as a gift 2 years ago. She wasn't wearing it for me, long day to day. I asked. Yeah, a lot of stuff to catch up on. Her answers were sharp and minimal, like she wanted to cut the conversation before it even started. When she finally left the apartment, the silence she left behind felt heavier than the conversation itself. I stayed sitting at the table long after the door closed. I don't know how long exactly. I just know that something inside me was shifting slowly but painfully, like an old building starting to crack after years of pressure. I needed answers, not guesses, not fears dash answers. So after sitting there for what felt like hours, I grabbed my keys and stepped outside. The air felt different, or maybe I just did. I didn't have a plan, but I couldn't sit still anymore. My feet led me to the park near our building. I walked the same path we used to take on weekends, when everything felt simple and safe. Every step made my chest tighten a little more. I stopped near the bench where we had our first real argument, the stupid one about who should have paid for dinner. Back then it felt dramatic, intense, relationship defining. Now it felt almost childish in comparison to what we were facing. I sat down, elbows on my knees, staring at the ground. My mind kept replaying tiny signs I had ignored. The late nights, the sudden private messages, the new habit of keeping her phone face down, the emotional distance that grew so slowly I didn't notice until it felt like a canyon. But the worst part wasn't the fear that she might be cheating. The worst part was realizing I wasn't sure she still wanted me at all. Hours later, when I finally headed home, I wasn't calmer. I wasn't clearer. If anything, my thoughts were even more tangled. But at least I knew one thing with certainty. Whatever happened next, I couldn't keep pretending. Not to her. Not to myself. And the moment I opened the door to our apartment and saw her sitting on the couch with that same unreadable expression, I felt the ground shift again under my feet. Because for the first time, I saw guilt in her eyes. Not fear, not stress. Guilt, and I knew the truth was coming, whether I was ready for it or not. When I stepped inside and saw her on the couch, I froze for a second without meaning to. She looked up at me, and for the first time in days her expression wasn't empty. It wasn't cold or annoyed. It was something worse, tight, hesitant, like she already knew I came home carrying questions she wouldn't be able to dodge. "Hey," she said quietly. That single word told me everything. The softness wasn't affection. It was the softness people use when they're about to say something that hurts. I closed the door, kicked off my shoes, and leaned against the wall. I didn't even walk closer to her. It felt like there was a transparent barrier in the middle of the room, something we both saw but didn't want to acknowledge. "We need to talk," I said. I hated how shaky my voice sounded. Even if only I could hear it. She nodded slowly, then looked down at her hands. They were clenched together so tightly her knuckles were white. "I know," she whispered. I didn't sit down. I was afraid that if I did, I wouldn't be able to get back up again. My legs felt tense, ready to either collapse or run. For a moment neither of us spoke. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I could hear her breathing shallow and even. "Where were you last night?" I finally asked. She flinched. It was small, but impossible to miss. "I told you. I slept in the other room." Before that, she didn't answer. She didn't even try to come up with a lie. Instead, she rubbed her forehead, exhaling as if the weight she'd been carrying was suddenly too heavy to hide. "I went out," she said, barely audible. "With who?" Silence. She kept staring at the floor. Her shoulders shook once, like she was bracing herself for a hit that wasn't coming. I felt something cold spread through my chest, slow and steady. Not anger, not betrayal. It was the kind of numbness that comes right before pain, the kind your mind creates to protect you from breaking too fast. "Just say it," I whispered. "Please, I already know something is wrong." I just need to hear the truth from you." Her eyes finally met mine, and I swear in that moment, I saw everything she'd been hiding: fear, shame, uncertainty, a kind of internal war she had been fighting without me even knowing. It wasn't supposed to happen, she said. I didn't mean for any of this." My throat tightened. I stepped forward, just one step, because I needed to hear her clearly. "For any of what?" I asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, swallowed hard, then said the words I'd been dreading even before I understood why. "I've been talking to someone." My chest felt like it caved in. Not a full collapse, but the first crack. "How long?" I asked. "A few months." Months. I didn't even breathe for several seconds. Months felt like a lifetime. Months meant this wasn't a stupid mistake or a moment of weakness. It was something that had been growing in the background while I was busy believing we were okay. "Who is he?" I forced out. "It doesn't matter," she said quickly. Too quickly. "It does to me." She looked at me like she wished she could just disappear. Like if she closed her eyes tight enough, maybe she wouldn't have to say anything more. "He's just someone from work." My stomach twisted. I sat down without meaning to. My knees finally gave in. Someone from work. Someone she saw every day. Someone she dressed nicely for. Someone she wore perfume for. I pressed my palms against my face. I didn't cry, but my eyes burned as if they wanted to. "Did you meet him last night?" I asked, voice low. She hesitated. That tiny pause told me everything before she even opened her mouth. "Yes." The numbness in my chest shattered, and beneath it was a deep, heavy ache. Not sharp, not explosive, just devastating. I lowered my hands and looked at her. She was sitting so still, like moving even an inch would break something fragile. Maybe us. Maybe herself. "Why?" I asked. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't anger. It was a plea. "What changed? What did I miss?" She covered her mouth with her hand, shaking her head. I could see tears gathering in her eyes. "It wasn't your fault," she whispered. "You didn't miss anything. I felt like I wasn't myself anymore. I felt stuck. I felt like everything was the same every day and I made a terrible mistake." Her voice cracked at the end. A part of me wanted to shout. Another part wanted to walk out. But the strongest part, the one that had loved her for years, just sat there quietly, trying to understand the ruins she had just set fire to. "So what now?" I asked after a long pause. "What do you want?" Me neither." She closed her eyes, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "I don't know," she whispered. That was the worst answer she could have given. If she had said she wanted me, I could have held onto hope. If she had said she wanted him, I could have walked away. But "I don't know" meant limbo. Pain without closure. Waiting without a promise. And I realized then that part of her was already gone. Not physically, emotionally. The part that used to choose me without hesitation. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but they held. She watched me, panicked, as if she thought I might leave right then. "I need air," I said quietly. She didn't stop me. She didn't even reach for me. And walking out of that apartment, hearing the door close behind me, felt like the first step into a life I never wanted. When the door closed behind me, the hallway felt colder than it should have. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it was the shock settling deeper, numbing everything except the sharp pulse in my chest. I walked down the stairs slowly, as if each step required focus. My mind felt heavy, overflowing but empty at the same time. I stepped outside into the evening air. It wasn't fresh. It wasn't calming. It just existed around me, indifferent to everything falling apart inside my life. I stood there on the sidewalk, my hands shoved in my pockets, and I kept replaying her words over and over again. "I've been talking to someone a few months, I don't know." Those phrases kept circling like they were echoing inside a metal room. I walked, without thinking about where I was going. I passed the little cafe where we used to sit together on Sundays. I saw the bakery where she always insisted on buying pastries even when she said she was dieting. I walked past the park bench where I first told her I loved her. Every place felt like a ghost trying to grab me by the wrist. I stopped near the river. The water was dark, reflecting little fragments of city lights. I leaned on the railing and finally let my breath shake. I didn't break down, but something inside me cracked, slow and painful, like splitting wood. How was I supposed to react? What was I supposed to do? I wasn't the guy who threw things or screamed. I wasn't the guy who made scenes. I was the guy who tried, the guy who stayed, the guy who believed that love meant solving things together. But now, I didn't even know if there was anything left to solve. For a long time I just stared at the water. My thoughts weren't loud or chaotic. They were quiet and heavy, the kind that sink instead of float. I thought about her laugh. I thought about how she used to fall asleep on my shoulder. I thought about the way she'd get excited when she talked about stupid things like candles or new recipes. I thought about how she once told me she couldn't imagine her life without me. And then I thought about her sitting with that man, talking, smiling, feeling something she didn't feel with me anymore. That image hurt in a way nothing ever had. It felt physical, like a bruise forming on the inside of my chest. After maybe an hour I wasn't counting, I finally pulled out my phone. 20 missed calls. 6 messages from her. Please come home, we need to talk. I'm sorry, please don't disappear. I didn't mean to hurt you. One message stood out from the rest. I'm scared. I stared at those words. For years, I was the one she came to when she was scared. I was the steady ground under her feet. And now I didn't even know whether she wanted me or the safety I represented. I thought about going back. I almost did. But then the question hit me, why am I always the one trying to save something she set on fire? I sat down on a bench by the river. My body felt drained, like I'd run for miles. I leaned back and let my eyes close for a moment. I remembered how distant she had been the past few months. The excuses, the nights she stayed late at work, the way she started guarding her phone. All the red flags were there, and I, believing in her, trusting her, chose not to see them. I felt stupid. I felt betrayed. But worst of all, I felt replaceable. When I finally stood up again, I still didn't know what to do. But I knew I couldn't keep avoiding the truth. I walked back home slowly, each step heavier than the last. When I reached the building, I hesitated for a long moment in front of the door. Going inside felt like stepping into a minefield. I took a breath and unlocked it. She was standing in the middle of the living room, eyes red, face pale, hugging herself like she was trying to hold her entire body together. You came back, she whispered, relief washing over her face. I didn't answer. I walked past her and sat on the edge of the couch. My hands rested on my knees. My jaw was tight. She approached carefully, like I was made of glass. I thought you wouldn't, she said. I almost didn't, I replied. She winced. Then she sat down across from me, but not too close. The space between us felt like a canyon. Can we talk? She asked softly. We need to, I answered. My voice came out deeper than normal, emotionless but tired. She wiped her cheeks and tried to steady her breathing. I'm so sorry, she said. I should have told you earlier. I should have stopped everything before it went that far. What exactly did go that far? I asked. Tell me the truth. Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I could see the war going on behind her eyes. I didn't sleep with him, she said shakily. But I crossed lines I shouldn't have crossed. I let him get too close. My stomach twisted. Emotional betrayal wasn't easier just because it wasn't physical. She continued, her voice cracking. I kept telling myself it was harmless. Just talking. Just someone who made me feel understood. And I didn't realize when it stopped being harmless. I breathed in slowly, painfully. You realize how that sounds, right? I asked. You realize how it felt to hear you say you don't know if you want to stay. She covered her face with both hands. I know. I'm so sorry, I'm so stupid. I ruined everything. I shook my head. Stop apologizing for a moment. I need answers, not apologies. She lowered her hands. Her eyes were desperate. Ask anything, she said. So I did. One question I'd been holding back since the moment she confessed. Do you still love me? Her reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. She inhaled sharply, like I'd punched the air out of her lungs. She looked at me with open pain. I do, she whispered, voice breaking. I never stopped. I swear. Then why? Her shoulders slumped. She looked down. Because I stopped loving myself, and he made me feel different, not better, just different, like I wasn't stuck, like I wasn't failing, like I wasn't fading. It was stupid and selfish, and I didn't think about you the way I should have. Her explanation hurt, not because it was offensive, but because it was honest. She wasn't choosing in. She was running from herself, and I just happened to be collateral damage. I rubbed my forehead and closed my eyes. She waited for me to speak, terrified. I don't know where we stand, I finally said. I don't know if this is something we can fix. She let out a broken sob. Please don't give up on us, she whispered. Not yet, please. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was shaking, vulnerable, terrified. But I wasn't ready to promise anything. I couldn't. So I said the only thing I could. We'll talk tomorrow. I need time. And for the first time since I'd known her, she didn't fight it. She just nodded, defeated. I went to the bedroom alone. She stayed in the living room. And that night, lying on opposite sides of a door that used to mean safety, I realized tomorrow might determine whether we stay together or finally break apart.